Wasabi guys, coming back at y'all with another top 10 video. This time we're going to be going over the top 10 best Golgari colored cards in the Commander format. As usual, we're going to start it off here with the honorable mentions, and we have quite a few. Because Golgari colors are just stacked, there are a ton to choose from. Probably the deepest two-color combination in the format, if I had to say so myself. Just a whole bunch of awesome removal, good creatures, good graveyard synergy, stuff like that. There's a lot to choose from. First one we have here is Rayhan, Last of the Abzan, and Ikra Shadiki. I think that's how you say it. The Usurper. Again, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She has a very weird name. Well, I don't really like her as much as I like Rayhan. I think she's a little bit better. Being able to kind of take modular to the whole +1/+1 counter thing just in general, I think is a lot better than just dealing with high toughness, and I think it's a little bit easier to synergize with counters than it is to synergize with just high toughness. Overall, I think if we have more depth to the partner commander type, I think that would make these cards a little bit better. Then we have Lord of Extinction. Just a big creature, and I think that's why a lot of people get distracted by it. They think that, oh my god, once it hits the field, it's just going to be gigantic and there's nothing we can do. Well, he has no other abilities. He doesn't have any trample, he doesn't have flying, doesn't have unblockable, anything like that, to where you're not going to be able to defend yourself. Unless they give it any sort of evasion, you can just chump block this with an average token and you're going to be just fine. While it is a big body and it's most likely going to put in a lot of work in decks such as the Mimeoplasm or other graveyard synergistic decks where you're focused around just dumping your opponent's libraries into their graveyards as well as your own, it itself isn't going to do much without evasion, and that's a big reason why it's not on the list. Then we have Mazarek Krau Death Priest, one of my favorite cards, very underrated from Commander 2015. He's basically just Archangel of Thune for sack triggers, and that's incredible because it's so much fun to do that. You can use fetch lands to your advantage, you can basically use Fleshbag Marauder type effects, Grave Pact effects, anything that's going to force your opponents to sacrifice creatures or their other permanents as well. And there are a bunch of cards that do that. You could play stacks, and he works very well with stacks, and that's why I love him. But unfortunately, he doesn't see enough play in a lot of other decks to really make the list. I think he should see a lot more play. If he did see a little bit more play, he would probably make the list. And then we have Garrick, Apex Predator, very big planeswalker here for 7 mana in Golgari colors. Not necessarily an auto-include, though, when it comes to just control for these colors. You want that in Planeswalker form. He does give you tokens, he does give you a way to block for him, but aside from that, though, he pretty much just deals with creatures and Planeswalkers, which isn't terrible, but we have better Planeswalkers in these colors, unfortunately. So another reason why he didn't make the list there, there's just better options. And then we have the actual list here. Number 10 is Dorado Golgari Lich Lord. This guy is very similar to Lord of Extinction. He can get pretty big, but it's only creatures in your graveyard, so there is a distinction there. So he's not going to get too big. However, his ability is just insane because what you can do is just sacrifice a gigantic creature and suddenly you've just killed off every player. You can sacrifice a Lord of Extinction. That's a very good combo right there. And it's likely going to help you win the game. Even if it doesn't, it's still a very solid sack outlet. It should be a consideration for just about every single graveyard-based deck in this format. He makes a pretty solid commander option as well, which is another reason why he's on the list. He's not just good as the 99, but he can also be a pretty solid commander option too. Definitely something to keep in mind there. Number 9, we have Hapara, Vizier of Poisons. She is slowly becoming an extremely popular option in these colors, and for a good reason. She just makes a lot of cards good now. Carnifex Demons, stuff like that synergize with -1/-1 counters that literally saw no play before this in this format. And because she's a good commander option, those cards are now playable. That alone is a good enough reason to put her on this list. She made a lot of good -1/-1 counter cards playable, and aside from that, you can just synergize with tokens too. You have a lot of different directions you can go with the deck. You can go tokens, you can go control, you can go with the obvious -1/-1 counter strategies, and it all seems to work out pretty well. A very unique deck strategy, and that's why she's on this list, at least for me. Number 8 is Rasca the Unseen. A little bit better than Garrick Apex Predator in my opinion. I just think that her minus, it's easier to get off there, throw her down. You could pretty much just deal with any non-land permanent you want to. It's not going to cause you any problems. Her plus is it's not too great. It is sort of an incentive to not attack her, but it's, again, there's a lot better pluses out there, which is why she's not higher on this list. Her ult, though, is pretty much a win con if you're able to connect with those little 1/1 assassins. I think that is a little bit better, but again, her minus is where it's at, and in these colors, you want the best possible removal you can get. Green is going to deal with non-creature removal. Black's going to pretty much deal with creatures, so you have a lot that you can deal with right there on a Planeswalker. Pretty solid. Number 7 is the new Vraska, Vraska Relic Seeker. In my opinion, she surpasses the old Vraska for the whole fact that her other abilities are useful. I mean, the plus, you get a 2/2 token there. I mean, that's with Menace, so you're capable of swinging in there. Her minus is pretty much the same. It's not going to deal with as many non-land permanents. Creatures, artifacts, and enchantments. I mean, that's pretty much a lot of what you want to deal with anyway. Yes, she can't deal with other planeswalkers, but who really cares? Setting an opponent's life total to 1 is a lot better than having to connect with 3/1/1 tokens, so they're both very good planeswalkers. She's just obviously better. For 1 more mana, what you get more usefulness out of her abilities, and honestly, that means more. In the fact that her minus not just destroys those permanents, but also gets you a treasure token that you can sack for mana. That's pretty awesome. Number 6 is the Gitrog Monster. Extremely underrated commander option, but when you just pair this with a lot of stacks effects, it's just insane. Every time one of your lands is put into your graveyard, you get to draw a card. Basically, what you do with the deck, you just fill it with a lot of land search cards, land tutors, your cultivates, your Kodama's reaches. Not saying you wouldn't already put those cards in green decks, but with this commander, you just want to take it to the max and just put in as many as you can and throw in a lot of sack outlets, stuff for your lands that you can just do whenever you want to draw cards. It's pretty solid. Throw in something like a smokestack and suddenly your opponents are going to be way behind. Whatever you're sacrificing, probably lands, you're going to get back in card draw, so you really have no need to worry. The fact that you get an extra land drop with him means that you're going to be making up whatever land you have to sacrifice anyway. So if you're playing enough lands in your deck, you should most of the time be breaking even. You get a ton of mana. You play exploration type effects, things that give you extra land drops, and then you drop something like a Torment of Hailfire or a Death Cloud, anything that can just max out on X's value and just force your opponents to sacrifice everything, or deal a ton of damage to them with those same spells. Those mana sinks are just incredible with this guy. But even as one of the 99, I found that he's very useful, just giving you that extra card draw, that utility there. Throw him into something like a Mazarek Kraul Death Priest deck, and you have more sack outlets there. You have more sack triggers, get more +1/+1 counters on your creatures. That's fantastic also. Number 5 is Putrefy. Now, when it comes to removal in these colors, this is probably one of the most popular cards you're going to see throughout this format, and for a good reason. For 3 mana instant speed, that seems to be what we can expect out of our removal spells. Yes, this just destroys either a creature or an artifact, but really, when you think about it, 2 different permanent types you can deal with for just 3 mana instant speed is pretty good. And we see this with Anguished Unmaking, Chaos Warp, other pretty well-known 3 mana instant speed removal spells. Yes, those technically deal with a lot more than what this does, but in these colors, when you're so restricted to just these 2 colors, Putrefy is pretty much a staple, and it deserves to be. I mean, 3 mana, destroying a creature or an artifact for just 3 mana, I mean, that's pretty solid. Number 4 is Maelstrom Pulse. You have a lot more options. It is at sorcery speed, but destroy a non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name. So you have the ability to deal with clones. If someone's getting a little bit too crazy with whatever they're trying to do, they clone something insane, they just have a ton of different copies of it. You want to be able to deal with all those different non-land permanents, and Maelstrom Pulse is a perfect card to deal with that stuff. Only downside really being the fact that it is a sorcery speed removal spell, which does really kind of hinder its ability to be higher on this list. Honestly, if it was instant speed, I would consider it being number 1, but the fact that it's sorcery speed, same thing with Vindicate in black-white, it really hurts what this card is capable of doing, but not enough to keep it off the list. Number 3 is Pernicious Deed. Just a 3 mana enchantment that sits on the field, and at any time you decide to, you get to just dump however much mana you want to into X to sacrifice Pernicious Deed and destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. This is spectacular, and in these colors we don't have a lot of board wipe effects. So when you're capable of dealing with multiple different permanent types, not just creatures but also artifacts and enchantments, that's fantastic, and this is definitely an auto-include in just about every single black-green deck I make. For the fact that you can also just put 0 into X and just destroy all tokens, because all tokens have 0 CMC. Just a fantastic card, and in these colors again, non-creature removal is pretty essential in this format. Number 2 is Marin of Clan Neltoth, the most popular commander option in these colors, and for a good reason. Just the synergy with experience counters and what you're capable of bringing back from your graveyard. You could just take something little like a Sakura Tribe Elder and constantly recur it, get more land drops, or even something as simple as a Fleshbag Marauder and force your opponents to sacrifice more stuff. You get another experience counter. You just keep bringing them back, get more experience counters, and then bring bigger stuff back. She is just fantastic. And throw in cards like Sheoldred Whispering One, and you have more ways to get more sack triggers, get more experience counters. Basically, that's what you want to do with this commander. She is perfect as a commander because there's just so much in these colors that synergize with sacrificing stuff. You could play stacks if you want to get more ways to sacrifice, get more ways to get those experience counters. Just throw in a lot of good black-green creatures into this deck, and it should work out pretty well. You don't really have to do anything super fancy. Just throw in your best ETB creatures if you want to. Take advantage of being able to recur them, bring them back to the battlefield. Stuff like Avenger of Zendikar get you tokens as well. So you have ways to sacrifice tokens. You can take advantage of that. And she's just very powerful, and Recursion's usually going to be strong in Commander, allowing you to stabilize, come back into a lot of games you would normally lose. So that's why she's fantastic, and that's why she's number 2 on the list. Number 1, though, is Deathrite Shaman. Little 1 mana dork, however, also capable of putting in so much work, no matter what time in the game it is, whether it's early game, mid game, late game, puts in easily the most work in these colors out of any card. Just when you think about being able to stop your opponents from recurring creatures, being able to stop your opponent from recurring instants and sorceries from their graveyards, you can do that just by paying 1 mana, either black or green, tapping it, and you're also capable of either gaining 2 life or forcing each opponent to lose 2 life. So there's an added benefit there. You're going to be draining your opponents there of their resources. Let's say they Snapcaster Mage. Well, they have to target for Snapcaster Mage to bring it back. So in response, you just exile that instant or sorcery they want to flash back. So just a spectacular card here. Even with cards like Marin of Clan Neltoth, in response to her trigger, you just exile that creature they want to bring back. So it's just a spectacular card here, puts in so much work, and at the very worst, it's just going to sit there until there's resources in the graveyard. There's a ton of fetch lands, there's a ton of just evolving wilds, terramorphic expanses in this format as well, so you're also just going to exile those lands to get mana. It doesn't cost you anything to do that either, but when you need the utility there to deal with something in response, it's there, and it's fantastic, and I think it's very underrated for that aspect. And I think a lot of people look at it as sort of, oh, I have a way to gain 2 life, or I have a way to force my opponents to lose 2 life. You play it for the ability to respond to whatever your opponents are doing, and it is a fantastic card for that reason. Absolutely love it. So anyway, guys, that was my top 10 favorite Golgari colored commander cards in this format. Leave any suggestions if you want to in the comment section below. Anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off.